Hi, I'm Anna, and welcome to the Sommpour Deep Cut. When you walk into a D4 exam, the first thing to remember is that sparkling wine tasting isn't an intuition exercise. It isn't about recognizing a label or guessing a region. It's about evidence, the structure of the wine, the behavior of the mousse, the presence or absence of autolysis, the balance between acidity, sweetness, and texture. Everything in the glass has a technical cause behind it, and the exam rewards candidates who can describe those facts and then connect them to production choices. So let's begin at the base. Traditional method sparkling starts with a very particular foundation: high acidity and relatively low alcohol, usually around 10 to 11% before the second fermentation. The primary fermentation is almost always cool, typically between 12 and 20 degrees Celsius, to preserve freshness and purity. If you see a wine with sharp acidity, restrained fruit, and moderate alcohol, you're tasting the shape of a base wine that was deliberately built for second fermentation. That structure is not abstract, it's your first anchor in the exam. From there, your next task is to identify the method. The glass will tell you. Traditional method wines show a combination of fine, persistent bubbles and aromas that come from lees aging, the biscuit, brioche, pastry dough, almond notes. These do not appear magically. Autolysis requires time, and the WSET textbook is very clear. You need roughly 12 months on lees before those notes become noticeable. So when you smell them, you know something factual about the production. The wine saw meaningful lees contact, and the producer invested both time and cost into that choice. Tank method wines behave differently. They preserve primary fruit, pear, apple, white flowers, because the fermentation temperatures are slightly warmer than champagne based wines, but still cool enough to protect aromatics, usually 16 to 18 degrees. The second fermentation is short, often just a few weeks, and least contact is minimal. So the mousse becomes broader, softer, less persistent. The fruit is more expressive. The palate is simpler by design. When you describe these things clearly, you automatically earn marks because you're showing the examiner that you understand what the wine is, not what you expect it to be. One mistake that appears repeatedly in examiner reports is the over reliance on bubbles. Candidates see a fine bead and immediately leap to traditional method, or a frothy one and jump to tank. But the finesse of the mousse is influenced by pressure, nutrient levels, fermentation temperatures, and even how quickly the wine was bottled. So you see the mousse as supporting evidence, never as the sole basis of your conclusion. And remember, during the D4 exam, your wines could be rebottled as per exam conditions, and so the temperature could be warmer, and your mousse or bubbles could be less than what it originally would be at a cooler temperature. Autolysis, however, is a different matter. It is the most reliant fingerprint in the glass. If you taste those savory secondary notes, the bread dough, the biscuit, the nutty edge, you know the wine has been built on time. And time is expensive. So it feeds into your quality assessment and your price reasoning. Length, too, is often misunderstood. A sparkling wine does not need to be powerful for the finish to be long. What matters is how long the flavors, citrus, orchard fruit, brioche, honeyed tones, stay on your palate. Describe those specifically, and your quality marks rise immediately. Sweetness must also be handled with precision. Instead of writing off dry or a bit sweet, you need to understand the production behind it. A Prosecco labeled extra dry is typically 12 to 17 grams per liter, but maybe anything up to 12. Asti sits far higher. often around 90 to 120 grams, because the fermentation is stopped early. In your note, the key is balance. High acidity can support higher residual sugar, low acidity cannot. When you articulate how sweetness is balanced, you show the examiner that you're thinking like a winemaker, not a tourist. Then there is ageability, another area where candidates drift into generalizations. A traditional method wine is not automatically age worthy. It must have the structure to develop high acidity, concentration of fruit, autolytic depth, and a dosage that supports tension rather than flattening it. A tank method wine without autolysis with simple primary fruit is generally not suitable for extended aging, and the exam rewards you for stating that confidently. When a wine is suitable, you must mention how it might evolve. A shift into honeyed notes, dried apple, nutty tones, or savory tertiary complexity. Origin appears towards the end of your answer, not at the start. The exam gives very few marks for it, but you still need to reason it out. England brings razor sharp acidity and cool climate citrus. Champagne offers precision, autolysis, and a particular density of mousse. Cava shows Mediterranean fruit with a spectrum of lees influence. Trento Doc blends altitude freshness with riper fruit. Prosecco broadcasts its tank origins immediately. None of these rely on guessing, they rely on observation. The entire mindset of D4 tasting comes down to three movements: describe first, deduce second, justify always. Examiners can tell instantly when a candidate is regurgitating a stereotype, this tastes like champagne, versus when they're thinking technically, high acidity, moderate alcohol, fine mousse, autolysis, integrated dosage, sustained length. When the description is thorough, the deduction becomes almost self evident. And here's the quiet truth: once you adopt this method driven approach, tasting sparkling wines becomes significantly more predictable. You stop worrying about whether you recognize the wine and start focusing on whether you're describing it accurately. The exam doesn't reward recognition, it rewards reasoning. That is the entire point of D4 tasting: clarity, precision, linkage, and logic. When you learn to taste this way, sparkling wine stops feeling intimidating, it becomes structured. And structure is what carries you through the paper with confidence. If you'd like a written version of this podcast, the one pagers and step by step reasoning guide, you please feel free to join my study circle. The link is in this podcast. I do hope you enjoyed listening, and I'll see you on the next deep cut.